We'll get started here on Microbit Make Code, and let's go ahead and make a new project. And then this project is for my robot to be able to drive around at specific amounts of distance or time, so I'm just going to call it Robot Drive. And then we don't actually need the onStart or forever loop today, so let's just go ahead and trash those from the get-go. But what I do want is an input, so that way when I press button A, it executes my program, so like driving or turning or whatever I need. And then next, we're going to be making a function. So we're going to go to Advanced and then Functions. So the first function will be to drive forward. So I'm going to click Make a Function, and then we'll call the title of the function Drive Forward with no spaces. And then I want to give it one input, that's a number, because I want it to drive forward for a specific amount of time. So let's go ahead and put the time as seconds. Alright, and then we can click Done. So then right here I have my function. So whatever I put inside of this is what executes as my function. So I want it to drive forward for a specific amount of seconds and then stop the motor. So let's go ahead and add our servos. So we're going to have to go to the extensions section, which looks like it has moved from the bottom up a little bit. So right above Advanced, we'll click Extensions and then Servo. And then we're going to go inside of servos, and let's go ahead and bring in 2 of the continuous servos set to 50%. And the inputs for our robot should be P1 and P2, and our right motor is P2. That one should be set to -50 if we want to drive forward, because I need to move in opposite directions. So now I want it to move a specific amount of time. So I'm going to go to search and look up wait. Alright, and then I'm going to bring this in. So this is measured in microseconds. So it's saying wait 4 microseconds. And then after that, I want the 2 servos to stop. So let's bring in 2 of these stop servos. And again, we'll set those to P1 and P2. And then now we need it to where the amount of time that it waits is dependent on what we put as our input. So let's look up how many microseconds are in an actual second. So microseconds to seconds, and we got some scientific notation. Let's go ahead and just look at it here in text. So there's about 1 million microseconds in a second. So that's 1 followed by 6 zeros. So what I'm going to do is go to the math section. Then I'm going to bring in multiplication. I'm going to put that in that wait. And then I'm going to put seconds in the first part of that multiplication. I'm going to multiply by 1 million. That's 1 followed by 3 zeros, then 3 more zeros. So all in all, we're going to have 6 zeros here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Alright, so that'll convert whatever our input is in seconds. By multiplying it times 1 million, it'll convert those microseconds back to seconds. So right here, I can call my function from the function second, and it'll say drive forward for 1 second. So let's go ahead and download. I'm going to click this ... and then connect device, and I'm going to actually sync my microbit, so that way anytime I click download, it just downloads directly to it. So just go through all these buttons, and then now when I click the download button, instead of having to hunt down that file, it's now going directly to the microbit. Now we press A and it drives forward for 1 second. Let's go ahead and make a second function for turning. So again, we're going to go to the function section. I'm going to click Make a Function. So we are still going to want a number input, but we also want a text input, and this will be where we tell it whether it's turning left or right. So let's go ahead and name the function turn, and then for the text input, let's say direction, because we need to tell it it's either turning left or turning right. Then we'll put an input for a number, because we still need it to turn a specific number of seconds. So if you haven't guessed it, this is going to be slightly more complicated than our first function. We're actually going to have to use an if statement in this that decides based off of whether it says left or right, which motor it's going to run. So let's go ahead and go to the logic section, bring in an if statement. I'm going to click the plus button once and then the minus button once, so that way I can have a condition in my if and my else if statements. Alright, and then no matter which it chooses of left or right, we always want it to stop at the end. So let's go ahead and duplicate this wait. I'm going to bring that up. I'll put it after the if statement. So after the if statement, whichever way it turns, we want it to stop, right? So I duplicated that. I think it went down. So I'm going to grab that and move it up a little bit. Whoops. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put the stop after my wait. and that one's stopping P1. Let's go ahead and duplicate that and make sure it stops P2. So we've got the end of our function all set up now. Let's go ahead and make sure that our variable is correct, because right here it says seconds, but that might still be the seconds from the other function, so I'm going to delete that and bring in this variable seconds. And then next, let's go to logic, and for a comparison, we're going to bring in this one with the quotes. That means it's comparing characters or strings. So now using this, we can bring in direction, and we'll say if the input for direction is either left, or if the input for direction and the second one is right. So instead of just telling it like seconds this time, we're gonna have to tell it left or right, then the amount of seconds. So what I want it to do, if we're turning left, I want it to actually run the right motor forward, so I'm going to steal this second block over from my other function. Then if we're turning right, I actually want it to move the left motor forward. So I'm going to bring those two in here, and the numbers all should be correct. So let's go ahead and change our program. So when we press button A, I want it to drive forward and then turn. So I'm going to bring in the turn function that we wrote. I'm going to tell it to turn right for 1 second. Then I want it to drive forward again, so let's go to functions, and we'll bring in another drive forward. We'll drive forward for 1 second. Then let's go ahead and bring in another function, and we'll have it turn left, and then we'll download that and see what that looks like in real life. Alright, so it should drive forward, go right, drive forward, then go left. So I'm going to go ahead and hit download. Alright, so we've got drive forward, turn right, drive forward, turn left. Everything worked correctly.